So we are moving on to the lead session, Efficient Energy for All, Innovative Technologies. We have with us Dr. R.R. Sonde, Chief Technology Officer and Executive Vice President, Research, Innovation and Technology, Thermax Limited. Mr. Gautam Ray, Executive Director, CESC Limited. Mr. A.K. Jana, Chief Executive Officer, GAIL Gas Limited. Mr. Prashant Chaudhary, President, Strategy and New Business, India Power Corporation Limited. Dr. Sonde will talk on challenges faced in aligning multiple stakeholders in meeting the energy transition. Mr. Gautam Ray will speak on energy transition HR challenges. Mr. A.K. Jana will speak on city gas distribution. Mr. Prashant Chaudhary will speak on disruptions in power for all. The idea of this session is to present a holistic perspective of energy transition and adoption of technologies. So we request the dignitaries to please come and take their seats on the dais. Dr. R.R. Sonde, Mr. Gautam Ray, Mr. A.K. Jana, and Mr. Prashant Chaudhary. And ladies and gentlemen, you are requested to please take your seats. We will commence the session now without any break. And my colleagues in the Bengal chamber, you are requested to please inform the delegates outside that there is no break and we are commencing the session. Thank you.
May I request your indulgence in taking your seat and so that I can begin my session. Thank you. This session we have got 4 speakers including my opening remarks. We have got next by Mr. Gautam Ray, Executive Director CSC, Mr. A.K. Jana, Chief Executive Officer GAIL Gas Limited, and Mr. Prashant Chaudhary, who is the President Strategy and New Business India Power Corporation Limited. So with this, let me start my part of the presentation. I'll just give you a little background as to, can I have the first slide? So when Arun called me up sometime back, I think I was in Delhi that day, and he said, Dr. Sonde, this particular chamber's session is going to be on disruptive technologies, and you are working on a lot of these disruptive technologies, whether it is in the fuel cell, whether it's in the hydrogen, coal gasifications, and many things. So he said, maybe you can touch upon some of these things that are in the making. And I said, no, Arun, I am not going to be speaking on technologies. I've done enough of that. There are a lot of disruptions for sure are happening in the technology space, but I wouldn't like to be now speaking only on the technology space, because I've realized, maybe it is a late realization, that only technological disruptions does not mean that the actual thing will start happening in the society. I have realized, over a period of last 10 years of intense work, a passionate work on technologies, looking at from every aspect, whether it is for a Stirling engine or a thermoelectric power or the hydrogen or the batteries or the fuel cell, and what we are doing in the energy efficiency, the actual translation of all these great developments are not percolating into the society. That was very clear to me. And when I examined why great technologies are not getting translated, why great systems are not getting implemented, what are the factors that actually impact, I realized, and I told him, Arun, that actually is not the disruption technology, it's in the disruption in the mindset of the society which is very important, which is what is causing for many of these technologies not to get into this. How do we change this mindset? How do you ensure that there's a huge alignment of diverse strata of the society or diverse pillars of the society to say that this is what is important for the nation in energy transition? I remember when I was in atomic energy and we were developing all these things, when India was put onto the wall, when we did this Pokhran explosion, saying that no, how can India develop like this? And we were all spirited, we were young people spirited to develop something for the country, and there's a huge amount of alignment for every quarter of this society. Every quarter of the society. If I want to tell you one small incident, just after that, I was driving my car in streets of Bombay. I actually made a major mistake on the traffic. The traffic police caught me. He stopped my car. I showed him my identity card. And suddenly there was a change and he saluted me. He said, "Sir, this is a great thing you people are doing. You scientists are doing great thing. I won't really even touch you. Sorry for stopping. I had done a kind of a violation. But the fellow, absolutely ordinary policeman, was finding that we have done a great job. So I'm just saying that maybe the national pride of doing something, and therefore I put my former atomic energy and nuclear power plant, or what we are doing in ISRO, which I'm now connected in a very strategic manner, makes me feel that there is something else. So let us get this very clear. In practice, humankind is unwilling to make serious, and I underline that serious, and I'm trying to be a little provocative. Please pardon me, I know that I'm walking on a little bit of a thin edge in this conference because I'm not talking a subject which is very close to my heart, which is technologies. But when I'm realizing this is very important, and I thought this is a good forum to share my concerns, share my anxieties, that humankind is unwilling to make serious economic, social, and political sacrifices to stop this catastrophe in intense climate events. I'm not even alluding to what has happened in Kerala. Every part of the globe is suffering this particular thing. And if you see that plot of carbon emissions, you'll realize that none of the carbon emissions have come down. Be it Paris, be it Kyoto, be it Copenhagen. And you know when that plateau happened, can you see that yellow mark? It has happened not because of Copenhagen. Why it has happened is because that was a financial crisis, and financial crisis led to CO2 emission getting reduced in the emission profile. So what does it say? The technology did not work here. It is absolutely the financial, economic benefits that one can see. And if that is the case, then all this talk about global warming, conferences, summits, and protocols have so far failed. And we must admit that to curb the global greenhouse emissions. And as Honorable Minister said, even the local emissions, which is mammoth, whether it's the SOx, NOx, particulate matter, or the toxic heavy elements, including mercury, is creating a huge distress. But there are technologies, there are disruptive technologies, but it will not happen. This plot is showing that particular thing. And my dear friends, I would like to say that current global leadership is not doing enough. Hoping, this is my understanding, that some magical solution will prop up, will happen. Energy transition dialogue, therefore, in this context is extremely important. I actually salute Bengal Chambers for taking up this kind of a work of doing this energy transition dialogue and trying to see how we can ensure a diverse group that is sitting here, at least an alignment that this is what we should do. And when Honorable Minister said, I'm ready to look forward to your recommendation, I'm ready to look forward, what is that you are suggesting? I think it makes an immense importance, or that kind of an onerous duty on us to ensure that how do you make this realization to the different pillars of the society, saying that this is what requires to be done. My own experience in developing new technology, which I started from atomic energy to NTPC to IIT Bombay, and finally landed in Thermax, a wonderful organization which Arun was also a part. My own experience in developing new technologies, I want to share it with you. And you will realize, and that's something 5 minutes I'll take, why great ideas, great technologies, great concepts do not translate into a great product. And I take responsibility. But I don't want to take that single point of responsibility. Number one, I thought solar energy is best utilized in India as a concentrated solar thermal, hybridized biomass as a combined CHP at a rural scale. I went to DST. I must commit that first time DST, and that time the Honorable Minister and Secretary Ramaswamy said, Dr. Sodha, go ahead. We got a huge funding. There's a buy-in by the policy makers. Thermax DST Shive project, and I will explain to you what happened to that. I thought 29% of the electricity for cooling, which is almost 75 gigawatts of the power that goes for cooling, can be met not through an electrical route, but through a vapor absorption hybrid with CSP combination. I will tell you what happened to that. Cold storage, and we are saying that today 60,000 crores is being wasted because we are not able to provide a cold chain. And therefore, we developed a solution, and what is happening, what has happened to that? In reality, when I look at it and when I'm going to write my memoirs, all these experiments did not catch up the momentum as proposed, and something entirely different which was out of my control emerged in this kind of a field. For example, the first experiment, which I did it, if I put it, and I think all of you will agree, that India needs these kind of solutions. Shive is a quintessential Indian village. 30 kilometers from where I sit, where our research center is there, and it has got poor grid, it has got scarce industry, no cold storage, huge amount of agricultural population, 500 households, 3,500 population, and we decided that we should have this project. It has got all the metrics which is important for a solar plus biomass as a 24/7 power. And you can see, I'm not going to read this particular thing because I want to, being a moderator, so I need to be having another 5 minutes, so I'll complete that and hand it over to other colleagues. So Shive project, if I find, is a very unique model project. Everything which is required in terms of the organic Rankine cycle and the steam cycle and the hybrid solar, direct steam generation, cost-effective solar collector, there's a beautiful place. And the villagers gave me about 6 acres of land to set up this project. Government of India put 50%, Thermax put 50%. We said we will ultimately end up in multiplying this to all 600,000 villages. I had a very idealistic plan that this is what is going to be the panacea for India's power problem. Now what happened? Now this is where the alignment is missing. What happened is that could not convince the villagers after I set up the project where they don't spend anything, that a village scale energy plant could sustain by themselves. I said, now you have to operate this plant. You become a local entrepreneurs. Because the cost of the power, because you are giving it 24/7, at that time, I'm talking about 2011 and 12, was a 4 rupees per unit, but available on a 24/7 because we've got a solar, we have got a biomass, we have got a storage, we have got an organic cycle. So everything that's required is there in that particular plant. They were getting a subsidized power at 75 paise. So when they were getting it 70.75, they were not, which is undependable power, which is not supplied by the MSC DCL, which is the distribution company, has made fundamentally villagers unwilling for any option, which is more expensive. When we told them that you can develop a cash crop, because now you've got a power available. You don't have to say my power is available only between 4:50 in the morning, because that's the way Maharashtra is distributed. When will they give power to a particular village for a 2-hour window? And they have to do that 2-hour window, but some of the crops need certain sunshine when the water is required to be done. There's a huge amount of crop engineering which is done, but they don't have water power at that time. Whereas this plant would have given them power 24/7, but reliable power supply, so that they could change the productivity. Better cash crop was not sufficient drivers to them. And number 3, biomass, which they said they will supply, cartelization started happening. Biomass, which was supposed to be gotten at 75 paise per unit, shot up to 6.5 rupees when we started operating it. So I'm not complaining. I'm not here to say that this is right, this is wrong. But when a great technology, and these are all three valid, if you look at it, it is legitimate points from the villager's point of view. And I'm sure some of you will say, yes, this is the way. Then how do I say we could build this? I went back to the policymakers. I pleaded with them. I said, one experience of a 600,000 is not good enough. Let us make some 300 such plants. Maybe things will change. But I couldn't convince them. Second experience, solar-based HVAC for buildings. Again, I mean, I can convince, and I'm like Shive, I'm convinced, and I'm not given it up. I've just right now put it in the shelf saying, like Voltaire says, when the idea will come, nobody can deny. I can be very philosophical about it. At some point in time, some idea will come that will happen. No, but that may not be the way that I must look at it. But I'm just saying that a lot of efforts has gone in making that happen. But it could not be multiplied. Solar-based HVAC, very clear. It can be made. We have provided a triple effect. First time in the world, this technology was brought, which will give you for every kilowatt of sun ray, every watt of sun ray, a watt of cooling. I'll not get into the technology details, but it's a disruptive technology. What happened? I said I must have a alignment. So you see all the political and bureaucratic, everybody I called them. So you can see the ministers and bureaucrats cutting the ribbons. So I thought, I can get their advocacy. So everybody was chatting, clapping, photo op, everything happened. End of the day, what happened? Could not convince again. Because I was saving 75 gigawatts of power, not as power, but cooling. So how do you correlate a kilowatt of cooling to kilowatt hour of power? Because kilowatt hour is measured, but kilowatt hour cooling is not measured, was the major issue. Now, again, I'm putting a lot of thoughts, development of a monitoring system. I went to the academics, I went to the great IITs and said, look, what policymaker is saying, that I can measure kilowatt hour and therefore I can give a feed-in tariff, but I cannot measure kilowatt hour of cooling, and unless that is done, because unless you have got a robust system of monitoring and measuring and validation, we will not touch it, was a valid thing from the policymaker, but it didn't happen. I'm just giving you how multiple concepts, which I had not thought when I was building this great technological disruption, failed through the pit, went down the drain tube because of these concepts. Cold chain, I mean, it did require 6 ministries told, Dr. Sonde, let us build this cold chain. This is the heart of the India's agriculture system. We have a problem at the produce, we have a problem in transformation. So we said, yes, we will develop it. Again, ammonia-based system, refrigeration, cooling, gasifier, worked with Terry, a lot of people, we did this huge technological USPs. But it didn't happen, it didn't happen. So this misalignment, I'm not getting the details, between technology and its translation in the field is a complex interplay and appears sometimes unpredictable. Can we predict it? Can we take this complexity in nature? If you take x-axis as a simple complex, y-axis as predictable, unpredictable, we are in a complex, unpredictable quadrant. And if you see the Stokes theory, you will find it extremely difficult. How do you get natural? And then what happens? I mean, today when you're talking about 175 gigawatts, not 1 gigawatt is attributed to what technologies that was natural to India, the thermal technologies. The natural affinity to the technology development in some other part of the world gets precedence. I'm nothing against that, or homegrown development. As a nation, we need to develop strategy which is more self-reliance driven and local, while keeping a tab on the global developments. I'm for that. I'm globally traveling. It is only through indigenization that country can derive total benefits of this transition. You miss it, you will lose it. And then assuming leadership position at a global scale becomes pipe dream. I have talked about this strategy. 4 strategies I have put it, and it was gone into when I was talking to Shyam Charan and Dr. Chidambaram. We said this should be the strategy. I'm not sure what happens. So when I analyze it, when I do an introspection, when I want to share something, when something happens in the US and I'm closely connected to the US, I go there now very often. There are some projects that I'm working with Colorado School of Mines and NREL, and takes me a number of times to that place, I realized one thing, which we need to bring it back, which is Golden Triangle, which was alluded in this opening inaugural session. I think we need enlightened leadership. We need academia, industry, government, and I'm putting industry because industry also has to take this blame because we are in a very short term. What returns I can get? You need to kill this syndrome of what I can get on my payback period because alignment is not a single point destination but complex interplay of all the interests. Golden Triangle is very important. We need right policies, right investment is all right, but it is important to have that. So when I say innovation-driven developments, I do not refer only to technology. My concern today is not technology at all. A very strange statement coming from me, but I would only say we need a 360 degrees development cycle. So innovative thinking, I would always say, has to come from more from less. India can become a beacon for innovation. We have seen that. At $28 prosthetic foot does same thing as $20,000 is the example that I don't mind repeating it at every time. This is the magnitude of innovation that it can do. Once you do that, then you know nobody can stop you. So in energy transition, this is what we want ultimately to bring these aspects. So I would still say, and Arun, I don't want to disappoint him, you have talked everything and you have not talked about the disruptions. I would say 5 important disruptive developments in energy transition, and I will close my talk. Number 1, I still remain energy generation will not be only solar because solar can be misleading. Solar has to be continuous. Solar informed power cannot be compared to a coal power. Very clear. So when they manifest largely as a distribution plan is what is going to be the future. Transport sector will be driven by electricity, but electricity will be done on hydrogen, and that's something which I am pushing it. Absolutely, hydrogen will be generated from a renewable power or CO2 will be captured for its conversion. So these two things will work well. Take the carbon out of the equation. And there are huge, I mean, if you look at nickel bismuth as one of the liquid metal salt, what you can do is just cut carbon and hydrogen. Carbon is a nanofiber. Today, the carbon will replace every ferrous metallurgy and hydrogen will replace every energy system. So I'm very high on hydrogen as this thing. Industry will transit from fossil dominant to green technologies, energy storage. So these 5 things are very important. I would give you one example. We are working on fuel cells. Thermax is the only company which is working with Indian Navy for our submarine. I cannot talk more, but it's now in the open domain. We are developing for air independent propulsion. The only country after Germany and Sweden to develop this AIP, and we are developing on this. Based on that development, now we are pushing to telecom sector, residential pipe natural gas, fuel cell. Why we are saying fuel cell? We are not talking fuel cell from any other point that it makes a sense as a part of a DG. Total cost of ownership is going to be much less. And we have developed this, which gives us 75% efficiency as compared to 12% efficiency in the DG set. And it makes every sense. And it has gone through a full golden triangle. NMITLI, Government of India, CSR, NCL and SECRI, and Thermax. So we are working on this development, which is exciting. Hydrogen pathway is another one. We are convinced about hydrogen. We are working on various aspects of the hydrogen. I'm the chairman of the methanol committee constituted by Niti Aayog. I am a chairman of the steel committee for various hydrogen required for the DRI. DRI is in a COREX process where we are looking at coal to be converted into synth gas to be conditioned to get hydrogen to be getting into that midrex or a horizontal kiln is where we are working on this. So in conclusion, different metrics for economic analysis for the new energy systems, alignment between various people, diversity of the country makes it clear that cannot be a single silver bullet. What is required in the eastern part is not the same thing which is required in the Rajasthan desert. What is required in the south is not the same thing what is required in different places. So we need to have multiple solutions which are to be local, building innovative spirit by the startup initiative, by the young and passionate entrepreneurs, will be the hope that India will not only adopt to new energy transition, but become a leader amongst the pack of global nations. We need to change the norm. Important thing, I conclude, the norm has to be changed. The mindset has to be killed. that our society measures the transition and its willingness to sacrifice some comfort. I started with sacrifice, which is important, political, social, and economic sacrifice. It is the attitude, can do it attitude. We have shown this. I mean, when we win so much of gold medals in Asian Games, we feel happy that India is now inching towards these kind of things. And it can happen only when we build this collaborative spirit. Atharva Veda says, we learn happily or miserably perish. Man can live individually, but Indians can survive only collectively. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this particular thing. May I request Mr. Gautam Ray, Executive Director, CSC, on, I think he's going to talk something on HR, which is extremely important. Thank you.
Good afternoon. In fact, ladies and gentlemen and distinguished speakers on the dais, Dr. Sonde, Mr. Jana and Mr. Chaudhary, and also I find distinguished personalities in front of me. We are running late, so I will just touch upon a few points which I thought I should share with you. We are in a city which witnessed electricity first coming in the country only 120 years back, and that with the hand of the company CSC, where I am fortunate to be working for last more than 30 years. And from there, I mean, it was a story of kilowatts to today's figure of 334 gigawatt, what Honorable Minister was speaking of. It's a long journey. Of course, it's a long journey. And the country today, India, is managing a grid. Grid means the whole of the power system that is third or fourth in the world. You think of the system which has an integrated system starting from the one end in Dibrugarh, other end in Dharoka, the same system is operating. That's amazing. In fact, couple of years back also we couldn't think of it. There has been ambitious plan also for adding generation capacity, be it coal, and we have been heard about this 175 gigawatt of this renewable. Of course, a very ambitious plan, and particularly in a juncture where we have witnessed the devastating flood, what has happened in Kerala. I mean, of course, with the global warming, what is taking place, that's very important and very significant and very contextual too. But this sector is a typical, has its uniqueness. Uniqueness, I can spell upon one of the uniqueness that the city of Calcutta, it has a peak demand. We have served the peak demand of almost touching to 2200 megawatt, which is only a couple of hours of the whole 8,760 hours of the year. And many of the time, particularly the winter, the demand comes down to 600 megawatt. So our utility has to manage a diversity of having from 2,000, 2,200 megawatt to 600 megawatt, but it has to have that capacity in hand, which requires huge investment. So we have to think about how really the investment is getting utilized. I'm speaking from the business point of view. I'm speaking from the basically the investment as a whole, the resource point of view of the country as a whole. And that uniqueness, in fact, is now has converted completely to the schedule-based approach. It's not in the hand of utility what the demand would be. We have been speaking so much about the business, I mean, energy efficiency. We have been speaking so much about this renewable sector. Absolutely correct. Why can't you think of something on the demand management which is non-investive? I can speak only is such a vast country. I do not know where many of the advanced countries are having the time zones to get advantage of the occurrence of peak demand at different time of the day. Why can't India cannot think of it? Why can't we think of some advancement of clock during the summer, between the summer and the winter, to get advantage of the peak demand is not happening, I mean, simultaneously with the clock related demand. Actually, the demand has very distinctly two components. One is clock related, which will happen irrespective of weather, irrespective of the sunlight. Another is sunlight related, which doesn't really driven by the clocks. So this is nothing new I am speaking of, it has been practiced since almost Second World War. But that's not happening. Major challenges what we are facing now as a whole, one is cost. Because typically the product, Mr. Shutitya Bhattacharya was speaking about the electron, this product doesn't have any color, doesn't have any model. It has only two components which will drive the competitiveness, that is cost and the reliability. We provide one of the most reliable power supply and we know how the cost is. Everything has a cost in it. Whole lot of technology, whether we call it disruptive or not, but there is an exponential and very fast changing of technology happening in this industry. Rate of obsolescence is not even 5 years. So how to manage that element? And whole of the concept, if you find that value integration is coming, it's not a standalone technology. 30 years back, or say 3-4 decades I am speaking of ahead, before that, the technologies were installed and implemented standalone. But right now, suppose, for example, we speak of smart grid, smart metering. It's not the meter only. It will have a complete business process re-engineering. It will have integrated with the other service providers. So one, unless have a complete thought process on a holistic manner, on a comprehensive manner, this technology what is now being introduced is not a standalone activity. This city of Calcutta, the distribution hubs we had, in my lifetime I have seen from a complete manning of those, today there is no distribution hubs are manned, completely automated. Now speaking one or two points on the question of HR, the challenge what we are facing, we are speaking of EV, we are speaking of storage, we are speaking of Internet of Things, IoT, OT, excellent. But what will happen to the whole huge manpower what is already engaged in the industry? Because this is a more man-intensive industry at one point of time. Not speaking of the utility where I work in, the state electricity boards which has been unbundled into the different entities, DISCOMs, GENCO, they are engaging huge manpower, including the contracted manpower. Now, do we have that wherewithal that with the fast change of technology what is happening, the process of upskilling people, can we engage the same set of people with a complete new set of technology and process which I sure will be introduced by 5 years time frame? Or the whole lot of people will become redundant and we will search for a new set of people. That's the major question I am speaking. We have seen whole lot of meter readers what we had, they have now completely taking the readings into an automatic fashion, transferring the data, and I know the pain how the utility had to go through to train and continuously retrain themselves. So I was speaking of whether we are speaking of so much of EV, IoT, renewable. Have we really changed our curriculums in technology institutions? Are we really compatible to the technologies which we are speaking of, which is on the doorstep? Or we are practicing the age-old traditionals? I have a great regard on traditionals because I believe that the basic physics has to be there. But the type of necessity of changes, what I will request such forums to take care of. Otherwise, what we are speaking, what we are thinking, what we are observing, we are not really capable to handle all these things. There is a question of change management, mindset change. Rightly, Dr. Shah was speaking of the mindset change. all the organizations, these organizations, when I started working, I thought it was an engineering organization. Today, on the core of my heart, we believe that it is a service organization. And the service organization in a society where the expectation of the consumer changing rightly day by day. There is no Shobhandev Babu was speaking of, rightly, that there is no limit on the demand and expectation. And that is changing very fast. Whether we are in a position to really cater those, that sense of customer centricity, whether that is prevailing in these utilities, how can we whole of the workforce, we can motivate them on the question of customer centricity. And here the role of leadership plays a major important role. The leadership is traditional in many cases. People joining from the institutions, working because the retention rate is little high in this particular industry. You will find people working more or less lifetime in particular industry. And at a certain age, when he has been operational for maybe first 2 decades of his career, suddenly industry and the society is expecting him to be a business head, a business leader. How can this transformation take place? And leadership has a major role in this change management process. So I was thinking that whether we can address, unless we address such issues, and particularly as common service integrators, that is very important I am speaking of. It will be difficult to really manage whether we call it disruptive, we call it non-disruptive, natural, but that is going to happen and we have to be prepared for that. And I thought that this is a correct forum to share some of my such thoughts with all of you so that something tomorrow can take place to address such issues. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Sorry, I think we are in between you and your mache jhol, but I have to take some time because if you see that the gas has come in India commercially around 35 years back. I joined GAIL in 1984, since then in this business more than 34 years, but in spite of that, the eastern part of the country is totally, I should say, it is zero. The infrastructure went on building other side of the country, that is your western part and northern part, some part in the south also. Even northeast it was there, but the eastern part of the country was not having at all any gas. With the support of state government as well as the central government, now GAIL is going to bring the gas to the city of Joy, and with this slogan, thus expanding horizon and transmitting smile, we are going to implement the city gas distributions in the city of Calcutta. Today's topic is this, and thanks to Bengal Chamber for giving me opportunity for sharing this gas business, particularly in India and then West Bengal. If you see that the natural gas is not only green, it is economical as well as convenient to use. You need not to store. It is just like the water tap. Suppose we are planning to give around 16 lakh houses to be connected through the piped natural gas to the individual houses, just like the water tap. Once you open the tap, the water will come like that, the gas will be coming to your kitchen. So 19th century was a coal, everybody knows that, 20th, then oil, then the gas century. Then the gas, it was the 21st century, probably the next, it will be the solar and all these things. But if you see that today, what is there within your hand, that is the natural gas. Why I cannot utilize this gas for the benefit of the nature, as well as it is economical also. Just think on it. To bring the gas to the eastern part of the country, it is took more than the 30 years. You know, all the technology, today we are discussing about this disruptive technology. This you become destructive technology if you are not utilizing them in the time. Time is the main thing. Took 30 years to bring the gas to the eastern part of the country. If you see that, be it CO2, unburned hydrocarbon, carbon monoxide, SOx, NOx, SPM, everything is more than 70 to 90% reduction is there if you are going to use the natural gas, especially in the transport sector. Yeah, today if you see that 66% of the population is going to be urbanized by 2050, and in India today it is around 31%. And we are planning to go up to 2030 around 40%. More the urbanizations, more the energy is to be used. As a result, you will be increasing the emissions, degrading the environment. The natural gas can play a vital role. That is my topic today. If you see the economics wise, in the Delhi, and I have taken that, around the petrol vis-a-vis the natural gas, it is called CNG, compressed natural gas, is giving you 60% saving. Not only environment, it is giving the good saving to your pocket also. And the diesel, it is a 40%, the bus is around 40% to 50%. By the time we will be bringing to Calcutta, it would be giving the buses around 20 to 25% saving would be there with respect to the diesel, and balance the petrol, auto and taxi would be giving you around 50% saving in the operating cost. In the commercial sector also huge saving is there, varying from 20 to 40% saving would be there. Now, the decision, we should decide today itself. It's a good forum to share these things. What do you want basically? In the energy mix, if you say, Mr. Bhattacharya, Partha Bhattacharya have said rightly, if you see that the natural gas today is having only 6%. If you see the bottom column, bottom row, India is having 6% with respect to the world average is 24%. It was 2 years back around 9%. Our planning was to go to 15%. It has come down because of the increase in the renewable energy. Now just think on it. Okay, we should accept the latest technology, renewable energy, which can give that is the ultimate goal to go. But do I have that capacity to do so? Even if you think of the developed country, do we belong to that developed country? All the developed countries, they have burned the coal over years and years together to become a developed country. When we are going to use the same thing, burning the coal, burning the oil, burning this, they are stopping us not to use that. This is the fact basically. We cannot think of today itself we will be reaching to that particular level. We have to balance. We have to decide today what should be the percentage of mix of all the energy put together. If I decide today, it is to be, the target has been set by the government, by 2030 it would be 15%. Let us discuss, stick to that. No decision is right or wrong. The decision has to be made right by planning, by investing all these things the right time in the right manner. By that you can achieve. You just think on it. One thing I can tell you, if you go 10 years back, there's a huge crisis of the power. As has been said by the steel persons, he was talking about the steel industry. Same thing happened in the power industry also. Everybody went. Even you can't believe in day and night, overnight people have taken out the gas-based power from the China, they have installed in Delhi. Looking at the huge gas is coming, gas-based power plant, they have invested huge. Today 1 lakh crore has been spent on the gas-based power plant. Today we are not able to use them. Today it is only 15%. Most of the plants are becoming, what should I say, the NPA, bankruptcy. Even I was the chairman of the Dhabol LNG terminal. I have commissioned that. You won't believe, 2013 we have commissioned that plant. I made a profit of 1,000 crore rupees in that particular plant. In the next year, when the KG-D6 gas got depleted, we don't have any gas to operate that plant. As a result, it has gone to several discussions with the help of PMO. Today, we are able to operate with only, you can't believe, only 10%. Only 500 megawatt out of 2000 megawatts, 25% we are using that with the RLNG. Question of affordability. So let us decide today what should be the percentage for the solar, what should be the percentage for power. Accordingly, you can plan and invest. Otherwise, again, it will be an infectious investment. If you see over a period of time, the gas production has gone, the utilization of gas has gone from 104 over the last 10 years, 104 mmCMD, metric million standard cubic meter per day, to it has gone up to 144. The country is producing around 50% today, and 50% we are importing from outside as a LNG, liquefied natural gas. And today, for the gas sector, it is the power and the fertilizer as a major customer. The CGD, the City Gas Distribution Project, is growing up with a CAGR of 16%. So it is giving a good investment, you can say so. But still, it has so many problems to implement this particular project. Around 2 lakh crores are planned in the city gas, in the gas sector over a period of time. Just think on it. What will happen if gas is not getting the space in the energy mix? Then what will happen to this investment? So I'm just giving you the picture, and you can, the GAIL's presence in this total gas value chain, we are there in almost all, right from the ENP to the end consumer, fertilizer, power, city gas, and this. We are having the regasification facilities also, wherein the gas is being imported from outside, and we are producing petrochemicals out of this natural gas, and we are producing LPG also. This is the pipeline network. If you see that the dotted lines are under constructions, the rest of that, it was the western part and the northern part of the country was having the pipeline. Today, country is having around 16,000 kilometers, out of which around 11,000 kilometers belongs to GAIL, and upcoming we are planning to go up to around 30,000 kilometers of gas pipeline. So coming to the city gas distributions today, we are thinking to, we have already made some agreement with the state government of West Bengal, and we are going to work very soon. Just to give a brief idea of what is city gas distributions basically. The cross-country pipeline will bring the gas from the source at a pressure of 90 kg. It's a huge high-pressure gas. So it will come to the first one, the city gas stations. It is the CGS stations, where in the pressure reduction, you cannot take the huge high-pressure gas to the city. So it will be reduced to the 19 kg pressure. Then it will go to, suppose if I want to, there are 4 sectors are going to utilize this natural gas. Number 1 is the transportation sector, through which we will be compressing this natural gas up to 200 bar. With that, we will be filling into the cylinders already built in the vehicles, and then it will go to the DRS, the district regulatory system, where further pressure reduction will take place to the 4 kg. And with that 4 kg pressures, with the MDP plastic pipeline, it will be going to the various sectors, residential, commercial, then industrial. Today, around 44 lakhs house got connected. The target is to reach within 2 years up to around 1 crore connections, out of which you can say 60% is through the GAIL only, GAIL and GAIL gas joint ventures. And then around 30 lakhs vehicles are operating on the CNG, and out of which around 66% GAIL is sharing. This is the investment. I can skip. This is the over a period of investment. The huge investment is taking place in this CGD sector. Coming back to the city gas project in West Bengal, we are bringing the gas pipeline. This is called Urja Ganga pipeline, which is coming from Phulpur to Calcutta. Around the total pipeline length is around 2,500 kilometers. By bringing to pipeline up to Calcutta, the target, the CCE has given the approval up to December 2020, but we are planning to bring it by December 2019. So but we have signed the agreement with the Matix at Dugapur. We are planning to give them the gas by March 2019. So I am hopeful that we will be able to achieve this target by 1920 to Calcutta. And pollutions, okay, I can skip it. Already we have signed the joint venture agreement with the state government. The state government, you know, the City of Joy. City gas project, though the by 1972 it started in the Baroda, but prior to that, 1857, this city was having the city gas, light through the gas, coal gas. 1857, and someone said rightly, we are talking today EVs. The city already is having EVs, the tram. Tram is nothing but that only. In spite of that, today where we are. So, this is the time, I can tell you, We cannot wait for the, you see, the EVs are coming, of course. That would be the ultimate. But what is the cost? If I see the one bus costing you 1.5 crore to 2 crores rupees, as against the diesel and CNG buses 24-25 lakhs, can we afford to do? How much subsidy you can give it to that particular? Let time. It should be the mix of everything today. We have gone 72 years we have passed all the after independence. Still in India, bullock carts are there. If you go to the villages, you'll find that India is a huge country. There are plenty of pies are there for everyone. So what I say that the city can, today the Delhi, I don't know if you think about the 20 years back, prior to this era of the CNG in Delhi, the Supreme Court has given the verdict that all the commercial vehicles would be on the CNG only. Because of that, today we are able to breathe properly in Delhi. We have signed, investment plan around 5,000 crores in next 5 years, and we will be connecting around 16 lakhs houses, and 150 CNG stations will be setting up, almost entire the Calcutta Municipal Corporation, KMC, and the part of the Howrah, 24 Parganas and South and North, Nadia and Hooghly district will be covering, and targeting around 3 to 5 lakhs houses, vehicles would be running on CNG. The smart city, Calcutta is a smart city, just think on it. When the house is connected through the pipeline, if you see the left side of the two photographs, unsafe transportations, taking more space, keeping the cylinder as a bomb inside the kitchen, only one single line would be coming, the yellow line. And as per the safety PNGRB norms, we cannot make it conceal. Only thing is that it has to be on the above the walls. So this is the one line would be coming. If you go to the commercial side, the hotel and restaurants, the bank of cylinders would be there, as against there is the simplified, only one line would be coming. So this is the gas corridor in the city gas. Definitely you have to have a corridor to lay the line. Support has been provided by the central government for many folds. It has been kept under the no-cut category. Then utility status has been given. Then supply of NDEC also has been permitted, so that we can give in the domestic gas. There are two, out of 4 sectors, what I said that the domestic as well as the transport sector is being catered by the domestic gas, which is pricing you $3.06 per MMBTU. Whereas the other 2 sectors, like the commercial and the industry, around today the market-driven price, it is around $11 to $12 per MMBTU. So we would be requesting that it should be brought under the ambit of GST, which will give us some support. And the second thing, the support is required from the state government to implement this project that we are working with them. So I don't foresee any problem would be there. But definitely, the more buses are required to be operated on CNG, then we can have a good city. But at the same time, I must thanks to BCC for giving me opportunity to share this experience. Thank you very much.
Esteemed guests and my learned participants and distinguished speakers on the dais. Good afternoon to you all. Especially my sincere thanks to BCCI to give us an opportunity to be here on the congruence approach of environment and energy over here. We must aware and recognize that the critical link in the power sector is the distribution and the supply segment. And that is today the most weakest link, I can say. Therefore, all shifting, all paradigm shift and innovation in terms of the technologies and efficiency improvement is being talked about. Today, the countries, in the distribution sector, aggregate technical and commercial losses is around 30% if you take away the government subsidies. That is totaling is about 60,000 crores. Any business, any model, in the absence of its linkage between the operational efficiency, financials, and its sustainability will not lead to value creation. The value creation of any business is really the need of our. We must talk on vis-a-vis the ability to pay. I have been witnessing the power sector reform since 1995, and the consensus agenda, the power for all, has been, always the top of the agenda of the government for the last 25 years. Still, we are yet to electrify roughly 25% of the total household. Today, and in the last 20-25 years, we have seen so much government committees recommendation has come up, but the result is futile. The thing is, we lack its frugality. Now, in the emerge of the recent era of the technologies and the structural reform in the market and the retailization of the energy has really led the power distribution sector into a disrupted sector, where its viability is a big question mark and appears to be a very distant goal. The emerging technology, like why it is disruptive today, in the face of the sick of the company, jeopardy financials, operational inefficiencies. We talk on transformation and transition into, in terms of electrification in EVs and smart heating pumps. We talk about the digitization by taking into account the smart metering, DSM technologies and energy efficiency measures. And we talk about the decentralization generation by taking into account solar, PVs and all these things. Everything is required, but what we are lacking is strategic fitness to draw the viability of the model. And it's frugal. When disruption in the sector is an opportunity in adversity, to think of the frugal of the sector, it requires, what to do and where to do. As one esteemed guest pointed out, coal is being transported from one corner of the country to another country. After generation, again the power is getting transported from another corner to another country. So the transmission of the power after generation and the transportation of the coal before generation led the, the generation cost, which can be really minimized and avoided to the extent of ₹2 per kWh. Therefore, it has been said, the power sector is basically a leaking bucket. Any persistently things we are going to do in this area without trying to arrest the leakage is going to be a futile. It's proved to be a futile exercise today also. Let's go back. I talk about the country's efficiency level in the power distribution. As I mentioned, out of 300 million customers in the country, roughly 40% of the customers, I mean the total consumption is in the urban setup and in industry where the efficiency is 100%. And the remaining 60% of these basically the rural sector, which we are catering roughly 60,000 gram panchayat in the country. And their efficiency level there today is 20% and inefficiency is 80%. So today we generate the power at the cost of 4 rupees and you transmit to the last mile customer, its costing is 8 rupees today and we really earn 20% of it, that is 160 rupees. So 6.4 rupees the loss per kWh per customer. If the per capita consumption is 1000 units, the total loss could be per household is roughly 600 rupees per annum. The issue is, as I mentioned, decentralization of the solar, photovoltaic and other renewable things, it need to be in a distributed manner where its cost, its swapping and hedging could have been minimized with the losses. Had those power would have been concentrated in the policy matter to produce only in those areas, space in the GP level areas, then obviously the 6.4 rupee of the losses for KWS would have been compensated the solar capital cost. Same way the decentralized in terms of the storages. The storages also for KWS to the cost is roughly 15,000 rupees per kilowatt. You see the viability. Even though we reach a scalable to the operation, the viability is really the key, the issue for the sector. And keeping in view the era of technologies and basically the age of the mobile apps, the power distribution today is take a shape up from utility to the consumer, from consumer to the utilities. It's purely retailization. People expect the service at the fingertips. That is required, but that is where it is to be required and where the penetration of the technology is there. So, taking it, I would like to conclude that required to be a pragmatic review and relook into the entire model of the energy efficiency, technology transformation, putting EVs in the light of its sector sustainability. Unless until the asset is created and its value is not created with the efficiency and business financial, things will not survive. It will be collapsed. So I would like to conclude here with some of the suggestion that first, we require to draw a strategical fitness in the light of our inclusive action plan. See that nothing as a DISCOM, as a power distribution sector, we should not settle nothing less than turnaround. Unless until we turn around this sector, its sustainability is really key and adding lights to the life of the people is also a distant goal. We need to go for all cities where today the efficiency is roughly 40%, we need to go for some kind of the privatization of those cities to unlock the value of the potential, and those value which will be created after privatization can be taken back to the rural backbone or other notified area or small municipalities, so that the power's backbone system in the rural infrastructure can be also sustainable. So for the rural area is concerned, we need to go for create some kind of micro entrepreneurs with the help of the national level institutions like PFC, RECs, to create all the gram panchayats is like a, like a strategic partner in terms of the business to see the sector gets viable. So with the help of the PFC, REC and other institutions, we can take the help of create a model of the micro entrepreneur in the last mile of the villages that will give a pave to way for sustainable of this sector. And the small towns where from 30,000 to 1 lakh populations are there, we can think of going for the kind of the franchises and PSP model where with the regulatory approval and regulatory excellence is there. Thank you very much. I would like to conclude with this. The need of our is the strategy fitness for the execution of all the program, which in the light of the power for all in an economically and a sustainable manner. Thank you. Thank you too much.
Thank you. With this, we are closing this session, and we would request Mr. Arun Mukherjee, Chairperson Emeritus of the Energy and Environment Committee of the Bengal Chamber, to please come to the dais and present mementos to our speakers, to Dr. Sonde. To Mr. Gautam Ray. Mr. A.K. Jana. And Mr. Prashant Chaudhary. I request my colleagues to change over for the next session, which is in conversation between Mr. Neil Span and Mr. Vinod Sharma on new technologies in power generation and storage. Mr. Neil Span is the Managing Director, Power Roll Limited, and Mr. Vinod Sharma is the Managing Director, Deki Electronics. We would request Mr. Neil Span and Mr. Vinod Sharma to please join us. The session was scheduled for half an hour. We would very humbly request Mr. Span and Mr. Sharma, is it possible? We can kind of, yes.
Good afternoon. Shall we get started? Yeah, good. So the good news is that we will try and finish this earlier than 30 minutes. There's a, yeah. So I'll start. Oh, it's on. Yeah. No, it can't do simultaneously. Can't speak simultaneously. Yeah. Yeah. So will you put this one on there? Yeah. On the screen. No, he's doing it, I think. I want it on that screen. The screen is okay.
AV, could you please switch these screens also? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, very quickly, what we are trying to do here is use the example of our two companies, Deki Electronics and Power Roll, to present what is necessarily a work in process, but hopefully leave some ideas for everybody in the audience on how collaborations can be made and hopefully successfully made in the area of energy transitions. To allow that, give me about 2 minutes to tell you who Deki is, and then Neil will do the same with Power Roll, and then we'll probably get into a short conversation. We often use this. Basically, Deki, we make very small capacitors, as you can see, the leaves of this tree. This is actually a capacitor tree called bonsai. The idea is that as a small company, we dreamt that we would give the world all types of technologies of capacitors that they would like. Like a bonsai master, we have a very clear way and methodology of where we want to go, and we've been following that since 1984. So we've been in the business of making film capacitors for 3 decades now. We started with a Japanese collaboration. We had a licensed capacity when we started, and this was in that license era of making 10 million capacitors a year. Today we make 4 million capacitors a day. So there has been quite some journey. 40 people who started that company have all, in my opinion, are all entrepreneurs who each created 16 jobs. So we are a 640 people team based out of Noida at the moment. The essential idea is participative management. I'm not an engineer. I don't understand energy and capacitors. So I said the best thing to do is to get the whole team to start understanding the journey we are on, share that journey with them, and I think we've come a reasonable way. We have been growing at about 20% every year for the last 10 years. In a business where we always say that our capacitors have to compete with Japan on quality, with Germany on reliability, with China on prices, and with India on payment terms. We have successfully done that for so many years. Moving forward, as you will see, I won't get into this, obviously not before lunch, but it's a one single page strategy sheet that we develop every year with all our employees. And the idea is we have a very clear way of sharing where we are going in the whole year, what are the must-do actions, what are our priorities, etc. So it takes about 2 days of a conference like this to get people together, and then finally this is the result that we have every year. And in this last 2 years, the result has been more and more saying, do more than capacitors, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So DECI 3.0, I won't get into even 2.0. We decided to diversify, obviously, like many companies are doing today, basically, but we wanted to stay with electronic design and manufacturing because that's a competence that we hopefully understand. We looked at 4 different sectors in which we thought business was going to grow much faster than the average. Retail was one, which we were right. Security was another, which I think we are also right. Healthcare, we know, is improving and is coming into its own. And finally, energy, which I'm going to talk a little bit about today. Just as examples, so within retail, we went into Sure Solutions. We do the entire electronic solutions for a retail industry. So any store that wants to know how many people came in, where did they spend time, what are the dwell times, analyze them, how many went to the trial rooms, how many actually made a purchase, etc., is all done electronically. How many people are shoplifting, were they caught shoplifting, at what point of time, was there a deal between the cashier and the... So we are able to do all that security, safety, inventory control through RFID, all in this one solution. And within energy, we decided to go 2 ways. One is what we're going to talk about. The other one is to do with electric mobility, 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, and small cars. So we're doing charge. Let me just show you some of the... So that's the Sure Solutions, which is an incubated company within DECI, which next year will become a separate company. Sure Check, Sure Count. Won't get into all the details, but anything that needs to be done in a retail environment can be done electronically and remotely. On the energy front, we have this one joint venture that we formed with a Korean company and another Indian company based in Bangalore and in Noida, which is called IPEC, Power Electronics Company. We already have 3 systems on the market today. Full Charge is our chargers for 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, smart chargers. Charge Flow is the software, the enterprise software that will run these systems. And finally, IPEC Drive Systems is another collaboration with a Finland-based company. We're coming up with electric drives with parallel systems. Won't get into that, but that's another very, very exciting area that we are working on. What are the principles and why are we trying to do so much? Very simply is late Professor C.K. Prahlad put this out in his last book on marketing. He said C is equal to 1 and R is going to be greater than G, which basically what he said was that every customer in the future will be a very customized, unique customer. And as marketing professionals, if you want to get that space, you better begin to think for an individual customer. The more you customize, the better your offerings are. While doing that, don't worry because you don't need to own all the resources in the world. The resources at your command are greater than the global resources. And that's the whole collaborative approach that we've tried at DECI. Hopefully we'll see an example today. The principles are simple: collaborate, don't worry about who owns it and what ratios. If you deliver value to the market, you can always find ownership, and we'll talk about that. Obviously look at creative areas because problems are many, and a country like India gives us huge opportunities because there is a problem to be solved everywhere, and we could do that. And finally, be fully committed to each one of those partnerships. Over to you, Neil. Yeah. Will you put his presentation? Yeah.
Thank you, Vinod. Just while I wait for the slides to load, there should be some slides from PowerRoll. Just to say thank you to the Chamber for allowing me, myself and Vinod to present to you today. I'm conscious there's been a lot of good presentations, but you are waiting for lunch, so we'll try and keep this brief. So we're going to talk about 2 things. I'm going to give a very quick overview of some exciting and disruptive technologies that we are bringing from the UK and collaborating with Indian companies to bring to the Indian market. And we think they could be transformational in the journey that India is having in its energy market. And we've heard a lot of things this morning. I would use the term transformation rather than transition. There is a transformation going in, and we think we've got some technologies that can help. It's not the silver bullet, but it will significantly transform the market. The second thing we're going to have a brief conversation on is about collaboration and about working together to bring new technologies to market, in particular in the energy sector. So a little bit about Powerwall. So we are in the UK. We're based in the UK. We're a small company, and we are developing some very, very exciting technologies. If you flip the slide on, please. So whilst that's flipping, I'll tell you about our technologies. So we are developing and have patented a new way to deliver solar PV technology. I found out I had to click the size myself. Done. So, so we have an architecture that allows us to manufacture in India, and this will be made in India, fitting with the strategy. We will manufacture solar panels that are up to 7 times cheaper than the existing technologies that come from China and other places. This is a unique architecture. It is super ultra thin, it is ultra lightweight, and it is very low cost. So to put that in context, we are talking about a manufactured cost of around about 6 cents per watt. That's to manufacture. And when you put that through the models, that allows the cost of energy to be about half of what it is today. So we think this is transformational. On the second side, we use our same architecture to develop energy storage solutions. And this is one of the projects we're working with Vinod on, and we will talk about that. So the energy storage, renewables are brilliant, but without energy storage, they don't provide the answer. And what we are looking to provide are 2 things. One, an integrated solar panel with energy storage. And for those at the back, you won't be able to see this, but this is our integrated solar cell and energy storage. So in something that is 1/4 of a millimeter thick, we can generate energy and we can store energy. And we think this has got huge potential across the world. We've chosen to come to India as our first market because we believe in the size of the opportunity here, and this can make a real difference. So we're trying to make solar affordable to all. On the energy storage side, we're also able to not just do that, we're able to create storage devices. So you will see things like this. This is a supercapacitor, and similar to a D-cell. We are looking to deploy our technology to replace this with something that's about this size. So it's less than 1/5 of the size, and that has huge applications in not just the Indian market, across the globe. This is very much a UK and Indian partnership. We're working to bring our technologies to India, but also to use India as a hub for the Southeast Asian markets. And our strategy is very simple, because we don't know the Indian market very well. We want to partner with the right organizations to bring our technologies to market, very simply. We have 2 collaborations on at present. So we've got a collaboration with Vinod at DECI to bring and disrupt the supply of capacitors into the power supply markets. And air conditioning was noted today as a huge opportunity, and that's something we're looking at. And the second is we have ongoing collaborations with TERI, the Energy Resources Institute, where we are exploring applications and deploying demonstration systems into the Indian market. And let me give you an example. There's approximately 30 million agricultural water pumps in India. Most of those are diesel powered. That is dirty, that's expensive. By changing over 1 million of those pumps to be powered by our solar and energy storage technology, that would generate around 4 gigawatts of renewable energy. So the opportunities are really here, and our technology will allow that to be done without subsidies. So I'd love to interact with some of you in the room. We are looking for further partners, but I think it's time that Vinod and I talked a little bit about collaboration, what we're trying to do, and conclude the session. So should we go there? Hello? Yeah, thank you. So let's start, Vinod. we're talking about energy technologies. There's been a lot of energy storage technologies talked about today and the need for it. I mean, what do you see as some of the challenges in bringing new products, and in particular in the energy storage sector, to the Indian market?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. As you know, and I'm sure everybody in the audience appreciates, while India is an extremely large market, there's no doubt about it, there are opportunities everywhere. But I think we are looking for customized solutions. There are some C's I'm going to use. So while we are collaborating, one of the facts that I know while trying to do business in India for 30 years is that it's an extremely cost-sensitive market. So if you go trying to sell anything in to any customer, while you have one of the best technical brains who will interview you and try to find out that your solution is the best, he wants it to be customized to his own requirement. And then finally, obviously, gives you a cost target, as we heard from ESL, Mr. Saurabh Kumar, even yesterday at the curtain raiser, the kind of cost demands that are put on us. So I think that's one of the big challenges. The second one is regulatory. A lot of things that we can do are not allowed to be done in the current policy or rules framework. So even as a medium-scale businessman like I am, you have to spend some time with the regulatory framework, trying to educate the policymakers, bring them on board, and you try and get lucky if you can do both at the same time.
And just developing that a little bit, Vinod, so, I mean, you run a very successful medium-sized company. What advice would you give to companies that are maybe of a similar size or maybe a bit larger or smaller in the audience about collaborating? What would your thoughts be?
So, since morning we've heard of several challenges that have been thrown up from an energy perspective alone. So if you were to just stick with, and I showed you 4 different sectors that are doing tremendously well in India, I think I see that India is really today in a golden period because our roads are paved with opportunities. Every time you see a problem, let me give you an example, electric rickshaws. As the metros are coming in, the last mile connectivity hasn't been thought of. E-rickshaws are taking over and trying to solve that problem. But these e-rickshaws have a problem within themselves that, a 1,20,000 rupee rickshaw has 24,000 rupees of lead acid battery, which doesn't last more than 6 months because of the way it's used. Now, all of us can obviously find a solution to just this one thing. So every problem means opportunities. Of course, it's a sort of you need a structured journey to take it from an idea to execution and be actually able to make some sustainable profits out of it. So my advice is that keep your eyes open. One regret I have is that I was born 20, 30 years too early. I wish I were born a little later because this is really a golden age. And so for the youngsters in the room, this is really a happy place to be because there is so much happening in every single area. And the fantastic thing is that you don't have to solve it all yourself. Like we found you because you were doing some tremendous work in your area, and we are trying to collaborate with other companies. So the advice is simply find a problem, try and look around for opportunities. Somebody in the world is trying to solve it. See which one of them is best suited to India, and then put your basic business instinct to play. And most importantly, yes, recognize that you only bring some value to the table, and hence your ownership and profitability or profit share should only be limited to that much. The trouble is, I think a lot of medium-scale companies, family-run companies, want to own the whole piece. That's not going to work in the current way of doing things. Yeah. So Neil, my turn to ask you a couple of questions, and then we'll wind up. I am fascinated, and in fact, it's a question on my mind ever since I first visited you in your beautiful facility in Newcastle. Why is it that this innovation is happening in England? Not just you, but many companies that are doing that. While most of us in India are still, we have an abysmally low rate of R&D. Is it your ecosystem? Are you guys really brighter than us? Or the opportunities are better? What is it?
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say that we can definitely rule out that we are brighter than you. That's definitely not the case. I think there's 2 or 3 things that I would draw out, and by no means is the UK a perfect example on innovation. There's some things that are done very well, and there's some things that aren't done so well. So let me give you 3 examples, because in the UK, for the last probably 5 to 10 years, there has been a big push on collaboration. I think the old mantra where every company solved its own problems, really that's dead now. The companies that do that probably won't survive in the long term. There needs to be an ecosystem of companies working together. So I'll give you 2 examples. So similar to the example from Geeta this morning, there's an equivalent organization in the UK called Innovate. And they do 2 things, many things, but 2 things that encourage us as a company in the UK to reach out to new collaborators. So the first is they effectively hold what I would call a speed dating session. So it's a session like this, you present your technology, others present what they're working on, and then they facilitate companies to talk to each other, whether that be academic, whether that be policy drivers, whether that be other industrial partners. And that's a great way to meet companies, because one of the challenges, being a small company, is actually knowing who else is out there doing what. So that's a great example, and I would encourage in this event and other events for people to talk to each other to find ways of collaborating together. The second thing is a very specific policy point in the UK. So we were working with Oxford University, and we wanted to gain some knowledge from that university. And the UK has this policy, it's called a knowledge transfer partnership, whereby the government pays 70% of a postgraduate student who technically is employed by Oxford University, and their sole mission in life is to take the knowledge from Oxford and bring it into our company. So that's a great way that we can really draw that link from academia. The third thing I would say is there is in the UK, and I think it's becoming slightly more prevalent in India, there is a real incentive for companies to undertake R&D, but also for investors to fund R&D. So in the UK, there are specific tax breaks for investors who want to work in or who want to invest in R&D companies like ourselves. So I think it's the ecosystem, it's political policy, and it's also funding that drive those three things. But the important thing is getting out there and talking to people and finding those connections of people who are working in similar areas and work together. So that's what I would say from that perspective, Vinod.
Thank you, very helpful, Neil. I must take you to some of our policymakers in Delhi because some of those ideas are really brilliant and need to be put in. I think one additional factor I find, and that's probably from the Indian side, is that we can still afford to use, let's say, low-cost labor arbitrage. And hence, a lot of us are stuck in that rut where we say, can we just convert steel to pipes and still make money? I guess in your part of the world, that's not a profitable business anymore, and you have to find a new way to make the pipe, I guess. So yeah, we must find a way to leverage this opportunity. One last question, Neil. As a CEO of a company that makes reasonable, let's say, consistent money, I still have a hard time explaining to my investors and board what I'm doing in life. How easy is it for you to run a pure development design? And I know that the whole development design phase is a very challenging phase. Yeah. So what are these challenges you face and how do you handle them?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I think what's important is that you give investors a very clear view of what you're trying to achieve. So we have a plan, a development plan. We've moved through the research phase. We've proven the science. We're now into scale up. But I think importantly, do what you're good at. And we know that we are not good at manufacturing. That's not our core competence. It never will be, and we don't understand the Indian market. So our strategy was, let's find partners who can help us do that, solve some of our problems, can help us with the manufacturing, who are skilled in it, and can then find us routes to market. So I think the challenge there is sticking to what you're good at. Our core competence is we've invented something that nobody else has invented, and we've patented that, and we've developed it. But we are not crass enough to think that we will take that to market ourselves, because we can't. I mean, we can't address a 1.2 billion person market. So I think it's just setting out your strategy. I think there is investment appetite in the UK, as there is in India, as there is in the US, to fund R&D. But you have to have a clear strategy, from that perspective. And the last thing I would say to wrap up, because we don't want to take up too much of your time, really, I would encourage you to collaborate. I think it is the way forward to solve the problems across the globe and in India, in energy and in other sectors, is to do that collaboration. 1 + 1 does not equal 2 in the collaboration world. There is significant power from working together.
Thank you very much, Neil. Yeah, I hope it's been helpful to you. I'd like to thank the Bengal Chamber and specifically Deb for putting this together. We've really enjoyed your hospitality and what you've done the whole day today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Span and Mr. Sharma. Thank you for joining us. I would request Mr. Debi Mukherjee please come to the dais and present mementos to Mr. Neil Span and Mr. Vinod Sharma. To Mr. Neil Span. and Mr. Vinod Sharma. With this, we move on to the next conversation between Dr. Shoptoshi Ghosh, Vice President, Technology, Leon, Exide Industries Limited, and Mr. Bhupesh Trivedi, Chief Marketing Officer, Chemtrol Solar Private Limited. The conversation will focus on storage for future business and disruptive innovations making renewables affordable. With this, I request Dr. Ghosh and Mr. Bhupesh Trivedi to please come and take their seats on the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, post lunch we have another conversation between Ms. Kritika Krishnamurthy, advocate and business consultant, and Ms. Namrata Mukherjee, head of public policy, Starlight Power Transmission Limited, on emerging vistas in regulation and policy in the realm of energy transition and new technologies. Which will be followed by a session on industry academia, and it will be concluded by Mr. Anirban Ghosh, Chief Sustainability Officer of Mahindra Group. So with this, I request Dr. Ghosh and Mr. Trivedi to take your session forward.
Thank you, Angana. So, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to first thank Bengal Chamber to invite me, Mr. Dev Mukherjee in particular to invite me in person, and I am really privileged for this opportunity to speak to this august gathering and this eminent audience. So, I would also like to invite my fellow friend, Mr. Bhupesh, to say a few words.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for getting us here. And as we see, we are the last men standing between lunch and this moment of time. Already a lot of food for thought has come through. Your minds would probably be full. And we would probably hope to, like a typical lady does at home, would try to shake the jar a bit so that we create more space for more thought to go in. And particularly look at the way solar and energy storage are causing disruption across the energy sector in India. I'd leave it to Saptarshi to take it forward from now.
Yeah, taking this opportunity, I mean, you know, today we are at this juncture, we are talking about energy. Now the thing is that why it is so important. We cannot do without energy. Anything today we do, whether in our own homes, offices, anyway, I mean, we need energy. And today the difference between how we generate energy and how we use energy is basically, earlier days it used to be more centralized, both the generation as well as the distribution. And now as days pass by, we are seeing the future electricity is more distributed, it is more decentralized, not only the generation but also the distribution. And here the need comes for storage. Why? Because the time when you generate electricity may not be the time for demand. So when you generate electricity, and it is one form of energy which cannot be stored as it is. So you need some storage mechanism, and you need to store because you want to use it at the point of demand. So if you see basically the most innovative technologies that are in foray today, the storage technologies, something like the pumped hydro, the compressed air energy systems, the flywheels, as well as the conventional energy storage, that is the batteries, the electrochemical systems and things like that, fuel cells and flow batteries and things like that. Now out of this, not only the general perspective to look at the energy storage technologies, but more specifically if I go to the electrochemical storage technologies, I mean area from where I come from, if you see the conventional storage technologies, the battery systems have given way to newer technologies, and in today's day, the advanced technologies that are in fray are lithium ion and things like that. So everybody almost are aware of lithium ion because it is already there in your cell phones and your laptops, as it was with lead acid, which was there in your automobiles 30 years back or maybe even more. So the thing is that another reason that why we need stored energy is the need for electric transportation, I mean ground transportation, wherein the transportation is turning slowly from IC based to electric mobility. So here also we would need to use electricity, store electricity, and in this domain of electric mobility, the crux is that you have to have energy dense storage systems. So here actually the lithium ion batteries play a major role because they are the state of the art and they can store energy to the level of around 250 watt hour per kg, and they are actually leading the way for electric mobility in India as well as the globe. Apart from that, I mean, you know, the industry would be interested that, I mean, from an investment perspective, that how would these technologies change over time, and so that they would be more interested to make a more judicious investment decision to, I mean, increase their earnings. So as it figures out is that in another 5 to 10 years, lithium ion would be the main storage technology, which is very attractive. However, the new generation technologies, next generation ones like the solid electrolyte batteries or other ion systems like sodium ion or maybe magnesium ion batteries, they would still take maybe around a decade or decade and a half to mature and really have some perceptible commercialization. But until then, it's going to be lithium ion, and lithium ion, because there is steady progress in the development of active materials, higher energy dense cathodes, higher energy dense anodes, as well as the overall development of the system as a whole. So you have seen lithium ion batteries transit from an energy density of something like 100, 120 watt hour per kg, and today's state of the art is around say 250 watt hour per kg. It has almost doubled. Not only that, another thing that has added to its adoption or faster adoption is the very fast decrease in price. I mean, 10 years before, a lithium ion system would have been 10 times as costly as a lead acid battery. But today if you see, at present costs, the comparative cost turns out to be around something around 3 to 4 times that of a lead acid battery. I mean, if you see over the years from say 2010 to 2016, there has been a 73% cost reduction in the lithium ion space. That is another reason. Basically, the system itself is attractive because of the high energy density, but the economics was hindering its commercialization to a larger extent. But as you see the costs coming down, it is finding deeper and deeper penetration into all aspects of our life. Earlier it was only portable gadgets like your cell phones and laptops, but you know, now you are seeing that even energy storage systems, other places in transportation, it is making a dent, and it is going to continue. So from the investment perspective, if you look at around another 5 years, 10 years down the line, yes, investors can think of investing in lithium ion. Globally it is happening so. And if you think of investing say beyond a decade period or more than that, you can wait and watch for the next generation technologies and keep a tab on. So anything, can you speak something on the solar front?
Yeah, in fact, I'll look at the entire energy mix and the way energy is generated and distributed across the country. The theme of today's conference is disruption, and the worst possible scenario that I can imagine is of making discoms redundant. What if there is no grid? I mean, today we are talking about technologies that probably can make discoms redundant, if not entirely, definitely in the form that they exist today. Mr. Prashant Chaudhary earlier in the morning talked about discoms being the weakest link in the energy value chain. And if they remain the weakest link, obviously Darwin's theory has been proven again and again that whoever is the weakest obviously has to make room for something which is stronger. And the way we see it is that technology with solar and storage coming in, probably discoms will find it very difficult to survive. And across the country, if you look at the way DISCOMs are working on their tariffs and their mechanisms and how they are dealing with solar, it's very, very challenging. I'll give you some examples on particularly on how DISCOMs are trying to deal with the threat from solar. Around 2016-17, DISCOMs started reducing tariffs for industrial and commercial consumers. This was probably the first time in history where DISCOMs were actually reducing tariff. It was largely because they saw threat from solar, saying that if solar is going to come in, solar is cheaper, solar is going to provide a fixed tariff or fixed cost over 25, a levelized tariff over across 25 years. And then they came in with various mechanisms or rules or regulations to prevent solar to happen in a big way. I'll give you an example of Maharashtra, where the tariffs are maximum and there are maximum consumers, industrial consumers in the state. They have actually introduced net metering, which of course took 6 months to get a net metering application approved. And now what they're doing is they have filed a petition before the Energy Regulatory Commission seeking that net metering be replaced with gross metering. So the idea is that you cannot consume power that you are generating on your rooftops. You first should inject that power into the grid and take it back from the grid so that the DISCOM can then levy wheeling charges, so that DISCOMs want a share of that entire benefit that you are getting from solar. They are trying to make it a lot more difficult for solar to exist. But as history has proven time and again, people and technology will find its way. Like water find its own levels, energy also will find its own levels. The way, what will happen in terms of next development in terms of technology is that industrial consumers, when they get sick of the DISCOM, they will start getting into storage solutions. I mean, in May, we were in China attending the largest renewable energy expo in the world. We saw containerized lithium-ion battery solutions, I mean, megawatt size storage solutions. Now, typically what we see happening is, or we can possibly see happening is that industries will set up containerized solutions at their factories. They'll use solar to generate, inject power into those batteries and consume from the batteries. With lithium-ion also, because of the technology, it can be managed. You can, program storage as well as consumption of power from the batteries. With this technology is coming in, gradually, if not now, maybe 5 years or maybe 50 years later, people will become independent of the grid, and DISCOMs will have a major problem in terms of defining what is their role, whether they are going to be a content company or a carrier company. Looking at this challenge, I was dealing with one private sector DISCOM in the country, and fortunately, they have come up with a strategy which is very clear. They said, officially they say that we are in the carrier business, we are not in the content business. And they come up to me and say that, Bhupesh, please talk to this customer, he wants to go in for open access, he wants to buy power through open access, go and talk to him. To that extent, that DISCOM is proactively working towards ensuring that they survive by just being a carrier and they do not get into the content business. That will be probably one way in which they will probably survive. But if you look at the state-owned DISCOMs, which have the subsidy burden and they got 10,000 other obligations to fulfill, they will have a very, very difficult time dealing with all the changes that are coming through. 2 years ago, Ministry of Power had announced schemes for revival of DISCOMs, for making them profitable, or even at least breaking even their financials. That scheme has also failed as long as there are subsidies. Coming back to what can possibly, where is the panacea for DISCOMs in that case? We are talking to a Swedish company which has a water pump which is for agriculture and domestic use, which consumes just 70 watt of power to pump water up to 15 meters or even up to 500 meters on the ground. With this innovations happening, what will happen is the major subsidy burden of DISCOMs, which is in this segments of domestic users or agriculture users, with the adoption of this technologies, the subsidy burden will reduce, and DISCOMs will need to really look at for their only survival, and also to ensure that customers do not run away from the grid and don't develop their own independent systems at consumption sites. They need to really differentiate between the content and the career business. And another point that I would like to make here in terms of disruption is, if you look at financing, today maximum financing, the way we saw financing, all private equity funds and venture capital funds going into IT sector in the past, these days we see a major movement of investments coming into renewable energy, particularly solar and storage, which will obviously bring down all the costs of power generation as well as storage, and that will again create more challenges for the power sector. At the other end, we have got thermal power companies, we have got banks which have lent almost 8 lakh crore rupees of debt is outstanding, and out of which 1.35 lakh is actually already defined as NPAs. Now with all this technologies coming in, there is a serious problem happening on that side, and government they are making efforts. We do read about it in the newspapers, but I don't think there are any easy solutions for resolving this issue of NPAs in the power sector. And finally, again coming back, to sum it up, we need to look at the way grid is structured and how grid will function, and to what extent commercial and industrial users will depend on the grid in the future. And that's where I think the major disruption will happen. Thank you.
So thanks to Dr. Saptoshi Ghosh and Mr. Bhupesh Trivedi. Thank you for joining us today, and thanks to our audience for your patience and being with us. So we break for lunch there. Before that, we would request Mr. Debe Mukherjee to please present mementos to Dr. Ghosh and Mr. Trivedi. So, as I have been kind of apprising you, please join us post lunch at 3 o'clock. We will start the session, post lunch session, with the conversation between Ms. Kritika Krishnamurthy, a lawyer, and Ms. Namrata Mukherjee, Head of Public Policy, Starlight Power Transmission Limited. They will talk on the regulations and policy in the realm of energy transmission and new technologies, which will be followed by presentation from Jadavpur University and IIT Kharagpur, the innovations which have been developed at academics, and then the session program will be concluded by Mr. Anirban Ghosh, Chief Sustainability Officer of Mahindra Group. So see you back at 3 o'clock. Thank you.